One of the many trademarks of the PlayStation Vita was to provide console-quality gaming on the go, which is strange seeing as the PSP delivered that very well. Sure, the Vita was surpassed by the Nintendo Switch, but it's really interesting how that Sony kind of ignored the importance of the PSP. And this is a perfect segue into talking about our game of the week, God of War: Ghost of Sparta. My name is James, and this is That Game Review Show. God of War: Ghost of Sparta is the second and last God of War game released on the beloved PSP, and perhaps my favorite of the God of War series. That's right, we're about halfway through, and we've only now gotten to my favorite. At least, I think so. Like everything else, my favorite changes all the time. I just want to set everyone's expectations for this video. My first time playing this game wasn't on the PSP. It was a few years after when it was released on the PS3 in the God of War Origins collection. The version of the game that I am playing here, in fact. Honestly, this is the best way to play Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta. Running at 60 FPS and HD is a major improvement over the PSP version. Even the version on the Vita, which is basically just the PSP version, doesn't run all that great. Anyways, there's no real use rambling here, so let's just get into the game proper. Shortly after Kratos has been accepted as the new God of War, he realizes that he is still haunted by the nightmares of his past. Visions and memories of his past in Sparta leads him to seek the Temple of Poseidon in Atlantis. Athena, naturally, tries to convince Kratos to not go to Atlantis, that it was just a vision, but Kratos is just too determined. However, during his talk with the goddess, the ship that Kratos is on is attacked by Atlanteans. So Kratos begins his bloody combat, very similar to the first game in fact, being stuck on a ship in the middle of a storm. I'll go through the combat and everything a little bit later. I'm just going to go through the story really quick, but I do have some things I want to talk about. Inside the Temple of Poseidon, Kratos sees a vision of himself as a young boy fighting with another young boy, Deimos. And then once in the temple, he is reunited with his mother, Callisto. She tells Kratos that his brother, Deimos, is still alive. When asked why she kept this a secret, she reveals that his father forced her to not tell. And when asked further on who his father is, Callisto whispers the secret to him before turning into a massive monster, which Kratos slays, killing his mother. So now Kratos has his goal, to find his brother Deimos, who resides in the domain of death. Kratos makes his way through Atlantis and into the volcano where he meets the Titan Thera, who in exchange for freeing her gives Kratos the power to imbue his blaze with fire, and a way to blast through some of the doors and enemies. In freeing her though, this causes a massive eruption and, in effect, caused the sinking of the lost city. As Kratos is climbing up and out of the volcano, it blasts him away to the island of Crete, where he later comes across a statue of Athena, yelling at her and is clearly mad that his brother is still alive. Kind of a weird thing to be mad about, but okay. She tries to level with Kratos and warn him that there's a lot he doesn't know, yada yada, and clearly Kratos feels the same way because he then destroys Athena's statue, severing the connection. Kratos comes across 1.5 soldiers with some weird and ominous warning about how death awaits the Ghost of Sparta. Not quite sure what that could mean, but maybe we'll find out later. But the ominous warning doesn't deter Kratos. He's still steadfast in the goal of finding his little bro. I understand I'm basically jumping from plot point to plot point, but fuck you, this is my video. The Gravedigger makes his second and last appearance in this game, where he warns Kratos to not go after his brother in the domain of death. But Kratos doesn't take his warning and shrugs it off like he always does. I actually really enjoyed the scene with the Gravedigger. He calls Kratos out on not liking the gods when he is a god himself, and Kratos explains that he never wanted the throne of the God of War. No, I just really like the scene. Also, Kratos mistrusting the gods is definitely a trait that he has kept throughout all of these many years. In the burning city, Kratos sees two massive statues of soldiers with crossed spears, like they were fighting. And this triggers Kratos' flashbacks back to a time when he and Deimos were training against each other. When Deimos is disarmed and falls back, Kratos instills him with the fact that Spartans never fall in battle, even in death. But as Deimos assures Kratos that he knows and is helped up, They see that a volley of flaming arrows is raining down on Sparta, and as the scene changes to show the oncoming army, the scene is then engulfed in flames. On his way to Sparta, Kratos comes across an icy path where he sees an evil-looking lady kill a Spartan warrior trying to find out where Kratos is. Good thing she didn't just, look to her right, or else she would have seen Kratos standing there. Once Kratos gets up there, he consoles the dying Spartan, telling him that he is a true Spartan and all that jazz. Crossing this falling apart bridge, Kratos finally meets with the creepy bird lady, Erinys, who gives Kratos probably the best title ever, the God Slayer. Of course, that just tickles the edgy teen inside of me, but I do like the title. Obviously, she and Kratos fight, and to no one's surprise, Kratos wins. And conveniently, where Kratos and Erinys land is basically right on the path to Sparta, so Kratos just heads inside. After pleasing a brothel, Kratos follows the sound of two kids fighting and is once again brought into his flashback of himself and Deimos fighting. And this time you actually get to play it. It's not horribly deep, but it is kinda interesting at the very least. Then we get back to the burning city. The narrator, Gaia, exposes that the Oracle had foreseen the downfall of Olympus by a marked warrior. So in an attempt to stop the prophecy, Athena and Ares raid Sparta and take Deimos away. Kratos tries fighting them, but is smacked away and almost killed by Ares before Athena stops him. They spare Kratos and take Deimos away. To let out some of his anger, Kratos kills one of those pesky non-believers that still prays to Ares even though that bitch is dead. It's amazing he was able to stay alive considering Kratos smashes him through thick wooden doors and everything, but I do appreciate that Kratos stabs him. At the Temple of Ares, we see our buddy, the last Spartan, leading a group of soldiers and bringing down a statue of Ares. Once the statue comes down and they praise Kratos, the last Spartan tells him that he has something to give to him. So he goes to retrieve it while Kratos goes into the temple proper. Inside, past the much smaller statue of Ares, Kratos comes up to a reflective stone wall where he sees himself. His chains in the reflection fall off, and Kratos goes to touch the image, but it grabs him and tries to pull him back in. Mirror Kratos turns into the image of himself as a kid, who then leaps out of the mirror and attacks Kratos. This part is just one big QuickTime event. It's not even like you actually get to fight Kid Kratos, even though that would have been kinda funny. Kratos throws himself at the wall in 4 very specific quadrants, and the glass shatters, until Kratos is so fed up with Kid Kratos that he tries to force him back through the mirror, breaking it further in the process, revealing a large, ornate skull. Somehow, Kratos knew that the Domain of Death's entrance is in Atlantis, so he knows he must go back. Back outside of the temple, the last Spartan returns and gives Kratos his old weapons, the Arms of Sparta, which act as a big-ass shield, a long-distance weapon, and the slow damage dealer. Thanatos, the god of death himself, warns Kratos against coming to the Domain of Death, and in Kratos fashion, he threatens to kill Thanatos, because Kratos is just that ballsy. After finding a golden girl and golden handprints everywhere, Kratos comes across King Midas, the king of the Golden Touch. He warns Kratos to stay away, saying that he is cursed, as he accidentally turned his daughter into gold like in the myths. If I remember right, I could very well be wrong, in the myths, the spell is reversed by running water over whatever was turned into gold, but Midas doesn't know that, obviously. The world around him turns dark, and the river of lava turns into an eerie-looking river, the river Styx. He possibly thinks that putting his hands in the underworldly river will remove the curse, but it just burns his hands off because it's still fucking lava. In doing that though, he turns the lava flow into gold, allowing Kratos to traverse past it. And I want to point out here, there's a Cyclops and a chest frozen in gold, and there's zero way to open it. That's right, I and many other people have tried time and time again to open this chest that clearly looks like you can open it. Fuck Ready at Dawn for even putting this in the game, but it was also probably their goal to piss everyone off with it. Of course, Kratos has no pity, so he throws Midas into an even bigger lava flow and turns it all into gold, just to get past. Maybe he's just getting Midas back for turning that chest from earlier into gold. Kratos works his way back out to the docks where he boards his ship again, sailing into the whirlpool where Atlantis once resided. Much like the first level of the game, Kratos' ship is being attacked by Atlanteans, but this time a lightning storm also rains from the sky and Kratos is knocked from the boat and is sent down into the city. Once he lands, a large statue of Poseidon wakes up and swears revenge on Kratos for destroying his city, a revenge that he never gets. He meets up with his old pal Athena again, who once tries to warn him against pursuing the goal of finding Deimos, but Kratos again doesn't listen. Athena explains that Deimos was a threat to Olympus, and asks for Kratos' forgiveness, but this sparks something in Kratos and he remembers the second figure there when Deimos was taken. On Kratos asking why she didn't help Deimos, she tells him that she was there to make sure Kratos survived. But Kratos told her that she should have saved Deimos, not him. Kratos gives her one final warning to stay out of the way, and this time she listens with no argument. Kratos rebuilds the bridge to the Domain of Death and he finally enters it, a place where even the gods themselves are afraid. But not Kratos. He goes into the domain and enters the Temple of Thanatos, where he finds Deimos there, hanging from the branches of a funky looking tree. Kratos cuts him down and frees him. Kratos tells his brother that he is free now, but Deimos has a different idea. He blames Kratos for being taken by Ares and leaving him in Death's domain for all of these years, and he will never forgive Kratos for that. The brothers fight, and in a stroke of surprise, Deimos actually wins, beating Kratos within an inch of his life. According to the trophy you get in the PS3 version, called Let Him Win, it's implied that Kratos is holding back and that's why Deimos won. But I like the idea that Deimos is just super powerful due to being Zeus' son and the Marked Warrior. But that would also ruin the illusion of Kratos being super unstoppable. After destroying his gauntlet on Kratos' face, Deimos goes in for the killing blow, but Thanatos swoops in and takes Deimos away, promising to make Kratos suffer for killing his daughter. Not seeing any other alternative, a wounded Kratos makes his way to the edge of the cliff, stopping once to spit up blood, and jumps off of it, falling back down to the mortal world, back to the Suicide Bluffs, where Kratos' adventure always seems to return. Take a good look, this is actually the last time the Suicide Bluffs is actually relevant. They reference them a little bit in God of War 3, but this is the last time they physically. Deimos and Thanatos are grappling at the edge of the cliff, and with a push, Deimos goes over, hanging on for his life. Even though Deimos nearly killed Kratos, Kratos feels the strong need to save his brother one more time, pulling him back up onto solid Earth. But this time, all seems forgiven as Deimos calls back to their childhood. Kratos presents Deimos with the arms of Sparta, and the duo go to make their way to Thanatos, who is waiting for them. Thanatos tells the duo that Ares should have taken Kratos that day, not Deimos. But Thanatos then tells them that their fates are decided, that the gods choose it and the fates make it happen. We all know what Kratos thinks about the fates, but that comes up later. Shut up! The duo then fight against Thanatos, who attacks them as a man, and then attacks them as a big demony mode that Kratos can only attack using Thera's Bane. As the fight continues, Thanatos grabs Kratos and slams him against the cliffs, but by pressing down on the D-pad, you can have Deimos save you. But, on the last one, Thanatos grabs Deimos in retaliation and slams him against the wall, severely injuring him. Kratos, in his fury, permanently activates Thera's Bane and completely demolishes Thanatos. One of my favorite feelings in God of War games is when the camera comes in close as Kratos is about to make a kill, and that happens here. Thanatos taunts and goads Kratos on. Kratos throws Thanatos into a wall, and then impales him with both of the blades of Athena. In a blast of energy, Thanatos is dead. Upon walking over to Deimos, Kratos sees that his long-lost brother is now dead. In a solemn scene, Kratos carries his brother's body up to the Suicide Bluffs, up towards the gate of Olympus, where the gravedigger has 3 graves ready.
spot for him.
Kratos lays Deimos down and places the arms of Sparta over the grave. He walks over to the edge of the cliff where he once tried to leap to his death before being granted the title of the God of War. Then, one of the best exchanges in the series pans out.
By the gods, what have I become?
Death, the destroyer of worlds.
So at this point I am tired of talking about the story, so just watch this scene.
It is done. You have let go of that which made you mortal. Your ties to this world are severed. You are ready to be a god.
Is this all a game to you, Athena? It is not over, Athena. The gods will pay for this.
Forgive me, brother.
What? Why would Athena call Kratos brother? It's a mystery. No, it's not. We've already talked about God of War 2. We know that Zeus is Kratos' father. No need for the surprise. So now that the story is out of the way, goddamn, I was not expecting this to be such a plot dump. It's now time to talk about the gameplay. Much like God of War Chains of Olympus before it, Ghost of Sparta is very much so a half step between God of War games, namely God of War 2 and 3. Since the story takes place just before God of War 2, Kratos does utilize the Blades of Athena, even though the moveset is lifted from the Blades of Exile movement in God of War 3. And I do have something to say about this. I hate that they have lifted the moveset for the wrong blades. Like, sure, gameplay-wise, the Blades of Athena and the Blades of Exile serve the same purpose, being Kratos' main weapons and a balanced way of attacking. But it makes no sense as far as logic is concerned. Like, did Kratos decide to use the God of War 3 method of attacking, decided, nah, I want to go God of War 2, then went back to that moveset in 3 is just weird. I understand that this is very nitpicky, but it has always bugged me a lot. Plus, if I'm going to be honest, I prefer the moveset for the blades in God of War 2. So the fact that it's the 3 moveset is annoying to me. Sorry, weird tangent aside, there is also another weapon to discuss. I did talk about it a little bit, but the arms of Sparta, at least for the amount of time that Kratos has access to them, act as the slow heavy hitter. But there is also a shield involved, which blocks heavier attacks and in a couple instances, allows Kratos to move through dangerous scenarios. In fact, this marks the first time in the series that allows Kratos to block and move at the same time. Oh, and as the last feature, the arms do take the place of the long-distance weapon as well, since there is one in basically every game. You can throw the spear at faraway targets and breakable parts in the environment. Nothing outstanding, but it is nice to loop that into a separate weapon. There are magics as well. I mean, that kinda does go without saying. The Eye of Atlantis is a lightning thingy that zaps enemies. Thanatos' death magic is good too. It hunts down targets and attacks them repeatedly. Then finally, there's the Horn of Boreas, which freezes enemies within the general area. And this is interesting too. Within reason, every classic God of War game has an ability to freeze enemies, just like having a long distance attack. Most of which God of Thor do as well. Weird. The final real ability to talk about is Thera's Bane. This takes the place of the rage moves in the other games, but instead of giving Kratos new attacks and frankly making him grossly overpowered, Thera's Bane imbues the blades with fire, allowing Kratos to attack metal enemies and will implant little bombs into enemies as you attack, and they will blow up at a later point. I had mentioned having Deimos fight with you against Thanatos, and I genuinely really enjoy this. Sure, it was very surface level, but imagine a God of War adventure where you fight alongside another Kratos-esque warrior. Sure, there is a mode kind of like that in the God of War Ascension multiplayer, but it's not quite the same, especially since that wasn't amazing. Graphics-wise, this game looks amazing. Again, it's between 2 and 3 as far as the overall design goes. Kratos looks really good, and so does the overall world. Like in God of War 3, Kratos will get covered in blood for a limited time while attacking enemies, which is a fun detail that adds to the brutality. Now that I think about it, I probably should have reviewed 3 before this, since I've been talking about it so much. Oh well. A detail that I like is Deimos looks an awful lot like Leonidas from 300. Sure, it's a pretty minor detail, it's just a lot of fun about it since, it's about Sparta and all of that. Also, his birthmark is in the same shape as Kratos' tattoo. I don't really remember where it's said, but Kratos gets his tattoo in the shape of Deimos' birthmark as a tribute to his brother, so it adds to a nice backstory as to why Kratos' tattoo is so interestingly shaped. Deimos' birthmark actually changes from red in childhood to more of a yellow when Kratos finds him, maybe in reference to Deimos being corrupted and changed in the domain of death, since God of War does like having the color changing signify like the mental state of the characters. Like how the Blades of Athena turn red in God of War 2 because of Kratos' lust for revenge, as opposed to white in this game, possibly as his goal is a little bit more noble. But I don't think a lot of that has been officially talked about and might just be completely headcanon. On the topic of the Blades of Athena, I do want to point out on their base power level, the blades do still have the blue energy glyphs on them, even though those specific glyphs don't appear until the blades are fully leveled in God of War 2. Also, a difference between the other games, instead of having 5 power levels for the blades, Ghost of Sparta makes it to where the blades and arms of Sparta only have 4 power levels. It's a small change to be sure, but an interesting one. Perhaps it's to help accommodate a handheld game so there's fewer sources of orbs? I mean, if that's the case, then they should have done that with Chains of Olympus as well. I do want to say this as well. Ready at Dawn, the team that would later go on to make the questionable game The Order 1886, did a really good job with not only this game, but with Chains of Olympus as well. Good job on them. Anyways, God of War Ghosts of Sparta is one of, if not the best God of War game. And it's certainly the best to be released on the PSP. While I do really like Chains of Olympus, Ghosts of Sparta is way better overall. If you have a PS3, PSP, or PlayStation Vita readily available, definitely pick up this game if you're a fan of the series. I've never really gotten into PSP emulation on PC, but I suppose that's an option as well. Just play it. There's many ways of playing it. So that was Ghost of Sparta. We were most of the way through the God of War series as far as videos are concerned. Overall time though, we're maybe halfway through it. If you like God of War, please subscribe and you'll be getting plenty of God of War foot content in the upcoming weeks. In fact, if you enjoyed this video, please let us know with a like and leave a comment about how I'm too nitpicky about Kratos' default moveset. And subscribe if you haven't already. Next week should be Terrell's week, so come join us back here then for something. Also, this is my first review of 2020, so here's hoping 2020 is a good year. And I know Kid Icarus, it released on Christmas. It wasn't a very Christmassy video. I didn't really care that much when I was editing it. I didn't even realize it's when it was going out when I was editing it. So, yeah, that's why I didn't say anything about Christmas. So, yay!